Well, I guess I need to kind of take everything back to the exact moment where the fight kicked off, as all of these sorcerers were lacking out. Discussing how to give Gojo a boost of confidence, as it's the first time they've ever really needed to do so, Gojo himself, accompanied by Gramps and Yutahime, all with looks of determination, then roll up and get ready for battle. With everyone around feeling his aura, Yuji greets his sensei wholeheartedly and lets him know that he can't even get close cause his technique is in the way. Gojo is slightly surprised by this, but after a moment ends up laughing while telling his boy to give it to him, causing Yuji to jump up and slap his sensei on the back. Then following on the same path, every other sorcerer patted Gojo on the back as he rolled through the group on his way to the battlefield. Walking through a skyscraper with Gojo now, Aijichi notes that it feels like ages since he was last here, yet in reality, it's only been just over a month now. Wanting to know what, the realm felt like, Gojo explains to him that the prison realm was like when you're mad busy with work that it flashes in a week. However, the feeling's so draining that you'd never want to experience it again. After a few moments, Gojo inquires Shibuya's metro station, where all of that chaos had started back in the Shibuya incident arc. If, we're being specific, that's where Gojo came across Chozo, Hanami, and Jogo, and they tried, teaming up on him and whatnot. Even though Gojo only fought them for a very short period of time, it left remnants of Gojo's cursed energy that made cursed spirits avoid the entire floor. Which is actually insane when you think about it, this man is so strong, his residuals managed to save him. Which is, I still can't fathom it, I don't think anyone else is on this level. Ajichi also reveals that the people who were affected by a 2-second domain are all fine, and those who were affected returned to normal. Walking up behind Gramps and Yutahime now atop the roof, Gojo and Ajichi arrive as the day of reckoning has begun. Elsewhere, a roommate asks what time the fight is going to take place, to which Sukuna reveals that they didn't really specify a time, but as he says that, he is able to feel Gojo's aura emanating in his direction, back in the hallway, and just moments before they made it up to the roof. Ajichi confronted Gojo on why he always wanted him to construct the barriers for him. Turning back and looking at his close friend, Gojo tells him that it's because he trusts him more than anyone else. Now, atop the roof and slamming his hands on the ground in preparation for his barrier, Ajichi just thinks on how he's someone who's always fled. No, someone who didn't even have the courage to flee and was given the courage to run by a friend. Despite everything, Ajichi braces himself and knows that he must live up to Gojo's expectations, either that or die trying. In front of the two, and while using her curse technique, called Solo Forbidden Arena, it is explained that any sorcerer of her choosing, including Yutahime herself, will have their curse energy reserves and output temporarily enhanced as long as they remain within range. To excel at Jujutsu is to excel at subtraction. The degree to which a sorcerer can emit cadence, movement, and other elements that relate to their curse technique determines their skill, and Yutahime leaves nothing out. Words, gestures, dance, music, elevating a simple technique to that of a ritual boosts its effectiveness by 120%. Yutahime's curse technique allows you to boost the chosen sorcerer's curse energy, and as Gojo himself also began chanting to add his own technique, 9 ropes, polarized light, crow, and declaration between front and back, it's revealed that just like our girl, Gojo has also never left anything out. And with the combination of the trio's curse energy, he shoots forth his 200% hollow purple. As Gojo's ability blasts forth, Sukuna manages to take notice of it and throws up his hands trying to block the entire attack. With the buildings all around him exploding due to hollow purple, Sukuna's defenses are undoubtedly breached as the building he was standing on is completely demolished, causing it to fall to the ground below. Yurame, who was next to Sukuna at the time of the attack, has also not been seen since this moment. So, correct me if I'm wrong on that or anything, but after this moment, she seemingly vanished from reality. So, she's either gone or she sneaked off, managing to survive that attack, probably healing up somewhere. Either way, as the smoke slowly fades, it's made evident that due to Ajichi's barrier, Sukuna actually misread Gojo's first move. Even though he knew where he was, he didn't sense the insane cursed energy output until the last moment. Bursting through the smoke, Sukuna, with one less hand, somehow managed to tank the first attack, leaving the true battle between history and today's strongest sorcerers to continue. So skipping back, just before the blast, Sukuna and Yurame were located at the Shinjuku Center, which is around 4 or 5 kilometers away from the Shibuya building Gojo was currently on with his team. Having strolled or probably just teleported across that distance in a matter of moments, Gojo tells the King of Curses that he's the challenger here. The challenger, though, Sukuna standing there finds it utterly pathetic that Gojo would state that after landing a surprise attack, in his eyes, and as he brings his hands together, Gojo is no more than a fish atop his chopping board, one slightly fresher, but still a nameless fish. Flaring up his cursed energy, Sukuna just remarks that it is time he starts peeling back Gojo's scales. Gojo asks him why he is still wearing that face, and guesses that Sukuna's original thought was to steal Megumi's body, so he would hold back during the fight. Unfortunately for him, our man has been through a specific set of training that allows him to go all out on anyone who resembles any sort of resemblance to the great Toji Fushiguro. Considering that Gojo himself trained Megumi, he probably knows exactly how many hits his student could take before he dies, and given that Sukuna had survived death while possessing Yuji's body, Gojo thought it would be prudent to only start worrying about Megumi's welfare after he kills the person in control. Initiating the conflict, the duo dart at each other, both just narrowly dodging each successive strike. Dropping to the floor just out of range of Sukuna, Gojo flicks out his hand straight into his opponent's nuts, sending them shooting into the side of a nearby building, and out the other side crashing into some stairs behind it. Getting up, he is instantly harassed by Gojo, who, stomping in his direction, proceeds to kick him in the gut, so he is perfectly placed in the middle of an overpass bridge platform. Continuing to stomp down, Gojo collapses the platform Sukuna was on, making his footing extremely unstable. Taking the opportunity to catch him off guard, Gojo activates his infinity and levitates the bridge into the sky, before tossing it directly at a large skyscraper. Resisting the force of the platform, Sukuna uses dismantle, or what I assume to be dismantle, to cause the structure to collapse. Then, making it over to a nearby roof in the flash of an eye, Sukuna pulls up his hand and sends a massive slice, using dismantle to cut the building directly behind Gojo in half. With the young man turning around to look at it, Sukuna quickly rushes him, throwing a fat right hook that catches Gojo off guard. However, as the punch connects with his infinity, he decides to deactivate his technique in order to physically take Sukuna inside of the collapsing structure. Following him up the hallway, Gojo quickly opens the door for a moment that blinds the two from seeing exactly what ability they are about to throw at each other. Catching them both off guard, though, the building crashes into the ground below, bringing the previously intense fight to a brief pause. Walking out of the debris while all of the smoke slowly starts to disperse, Gojo jokes that, well, he's just going to pin all of this destruction on Sukuna once he gets out of here. Sukuna, though, points out that he really can't say anything, quickly making Gojo realize that Mei Mei is actually streaming this entire fight to the world. When it comes down to Gojo's limitless technique, it allows him to be completely untouchable. To get around this, and in a similar way to what Hanami and Jogo did, Sukuna is using domain amplification to neutralize his curse technique. Confused slightly on what domain amplification is, Yuta explains to everyone, while they watch the fight, that he saw something similar in Mechamaru's footage. He pretty much said like what I exactly said before about Jogo and Hanami using domain amplification to nullify like Gojo's technique and everything. Hikari points out that it does seem like Gojo's domain has been neutralized, but he's still confused how. The OG Kyuzuke lets them all know that it's more of a refined version of a simple domain. If one sheathes themselves in a domain, without imbuing your own curse technique, you'll allow the opponent's technique to flow into that empty space, thereby neutralizing it. Angel points out that the main drawback to domain amplifications is that you can't simultaneously use your own innate technique. No one, not even Sukuna, is an exception to this rule. So, in her eyes, if Sukuna has another way to deal with limitless other than domain amp, then Gojo will 100% lose. Confused on why they don't just use the domain expansion, Maiba inquires as to why. She knows that immediately following the domain, one's technique becomes unstable. So, it would make sense for Sukuna to challenge the domain first. Carrero notes that it is easy to say that, but depending on the outcome of that domain battle, the fight would be over, which, in both of the girls' eyes, is the correct battle strategy. Yuji, though, having been told something by Gojo, reveals that he's pretty sure the domain's technique to begin with. Perking up, Waiwi wonders if it's because Sukuna doesn't think he can win in a domain expansion against Gojo. Still, Shoko points out that, yeah, you are right, but Gojo probably would have opened one if that was the case. So she finds it hard to believe that Gojo wouldn't be able to foresee that as well. Standing there, Chozo ponders the question of what would happen if Gojo's domain did clash. As from what he was told, Sukuna's domain is a barrierless domain. Hearing this bizarre statement, everyone just reacts in shock, unable to believe that his domain doesn't even have a barrier. As an example of just how impossible this is, Kyuzuke asks Miwa to toss him that water. However, after she gives him the bottle, he throws it back, telling her to give him the water, not the bottle. Confused, Miwa just facials the absolute hell out of Kyuzuke. While in behind him, Mei-sen explains that expanding their domain without a barrier is like trying to hold water without a bottle. With no container, can you even accumulate water? Can you paint on thin air without a canvas? With no stem, roots, or leaves, can a flower bloom from a seed? Maki compares it to using software without even having a PC to run anything on. It's frankly unfathomable in their eyes. It's completely impossible. Even still, she notes that Megumin's domain was never enclosed within a barrier. And having heard that before Megumin was given his grade promotion, Kusakabe explained that to use it, he actually had to use an existing structure to enclose his domain. Narutoshi Kumo, or like, as we know him now, Goro Kinjaku, was able to pull it off by himself, so it does prove that it can happen. Chosu, who actually fought during that battle, pointed out that they had prepared to use a simple domain on Kinjaku while Tengen dismantled his domain from the outside. However, because of the barrier-less domain, it was this simple domain that was torn apart. So Miwa, who is confused over what exactly would clash in this like attack, states that the sure hit effect is imbued within the barrier itself, so it can only clash with another barrier. She also realizes that, well, everyone is talking as if their domains are a given, but domains devour an insane amount of curse energy, so wouldn't avoiding using them make sense? And Yamaki speaks up and notes that, well, it doesn't really matter since Gojo has an infinite amount of curse energy. Ino knows that like fact isn't actually true, and it's just due to how he's skilled at using his specific technique. If his cursed energy consumption rate ends up being less than what he actually replenishes, then it could technically run out. That's just working under the assumption, though, that he's using it like normal. If he changes things up and starts using domains consecutively, then that could be a completely different story. Not having even mentioned what Sukuna is actually capable of, though. As well in fighting, Kashima speaks up to state that the sharpness of his technique's activation is unparalleled. The way he can switch things up in a matter of milliseconds, from innate techniques to domain amplifications, is utterly amazing. If Gojo literally wasn't who he is, then Zakuna would comfortably be winning in terms of curse energy utilization. What's more, his total curse energy output is probably even more than Yuta's. From what he can physically tell, he'd say it's probably double the amount that he actually has. Momo, who has been pretty quiet this entire chat, speaks up and feels that maybe nobody, not even them, knows how this is going to play out. If Gojo and Sukuna's domains do clash, who knows what could possibly happen? Then, right on that exact moment, and after all of this insane build-up that we just went through, Higuruma's signal that they are about to begin the domain clashes. Back in Shinjuku, both Sukuna and Gojo throw up their respective hand signs to simultaneously open the Infinite Void and Malevolent Shrine, with Sukuna now appearing above his shrine, and Gojo standing a few feet back. It's explained that the two are evenly matched. They form a perfect pair within Gojo's barrier, which, in turn, meant their both guaranteed hits overlapped each other, then canceled themselves out in this battle. And as the two expand their domains, should either one of them sustain severe damage, it will cause the collapse of their domain, and the other one's short hits will immediately take effect. Back at the TV room, Kazukabe and Mei both react in shock as somehow, even with their domains active, they're still evenly matched. In Shinjuku, the pure force of the two overlapping domains caused the surrounding area to start getting atomized. Sadly for Gojo, the effective range of Sukuna's domain reaches even beyond that of a barrier. And just as Yuji notes that a domain expansion is weak from the outside, Gojo's domain cracks and shatters, as it's shown that below it, Sukuna's domain now sits perfectly fine. With no protection against Sukuna's sure hit technique, the effect immediately flies forth and seemingly cuts down the strongest sorcerer of today. Having taken a slash to the neck, Gojo nonchalantly activates his reverse curse technique, which everyone back at the lair reacts to. Higuruma states that as long as Gojo stays in range, the slashes will never stop coming. Chozo, who assumes escaping is probably the port of call for Gojo, is backed up by Hikari, who somewhat agreed with him. However, it's more that Hikari assumes Gojo will make a dash for the exit, whereas Kazukabe realizes that teleporting is out of the question, since it's an application of the limitless technique. Due to the use of his Omen expansion and it being destroyed, it's plausible that for a moment he can't use his cursed technique, which, like they state, means he is in store for one hell of a beatdown. Back inside of Sukuna's domain expansion, Gojo is relentlessly slashed over and over again by the shorthand effect of the domain. Somehow, though, Gojo manages to calm himself as he knows for a fact that when it comes down to techniques, Limitless is far better. Having been able to consistently overpower Sukuna's shorthand effect with his use of reverse curse technique, Gojo, just like what everyone else had expected, makes a dash for the exit. Sukuna immediately makes a dash to keep up with him, while remarking that he isn't going to just let him escape. Grabbing his leg, though, Gojo, still while constantly getting slashed, pulls him in and knees Sukuna into the floor. Towering over him, Gojo attempts to land a curse energy-infused overhand, but misses, only cracking the floor as Sukuna manages to quickly weasel his way out. Standing there and looking at his opponent, Sukuna remarks that Gojo's still moving pretty well, considering that he's been activating his reverse curse technique at full output in order to survive the constant slashing. Gojo, on the other hand, notices something extremely important. To him, It looks like Malevolent Shrine itself is the heart of the domain, not Sukuna. Back inside of their headquarters, Yuji ponders what would happen if someone did destroy the heart of the domain, or like the shrine specifically. The big brain Kyusuke brings up that objects inside of domains don't tend to hold any special meaning or significance, so think of it as like it wasn't even there to begin with. Meisen thinks that if it is a symbol of the domain, then you wouldn't even be able to destroy it, and even considering Gojo's insane skills, it doesn't look like he's taken any measures to actually try to destroy it. Suddenly, Gojo activates the new shadow style, Simple Domain, taking Kyusuke by surprise, as he probably didn't expect to see this one. Yuji, though, noted that Gojo said one time he could use it, but wasn't able to actually teach it. During the battle, he was able to use his Simple Domain to counter the sure hit effect, while simultaneously using reverse curse technique to his body. Confused, Yuji wonders how one even manipulates their own curse energy, while reverse curse technique is active. Again, Gojo activates another use of the Simple Domain, before darting at Sukuna and attempting to strike him. In an instant, he is once again pounded by the shorthand effect, layering Gojo with a plethora of cuts though. Again, he activates another use of Simple Domain and reverse curse technique, causing Sukuna to call this all a little bit tedious right now. Randomly though, everyone back at the headquarters is taken by surprise when they see Gojo start attacking Sukuna once more without using reverse curse technique to heal himself. Someone wonders if he is running low on curse energy, but Yuta refutes this, as it is frankly impossible. There is no limit to Gojo's curse energy, even though there totally is. Speaking up though, Ina mentions that, like he said before, the assumption rate could currently be off. Right after domain expansion, he started using reverse curse technique and maximum output, which uses up twice as much curse energy, and that is not even taking into account the fact that Sukuna is also rushing at Gojo himself. With the two powerhouses of the series also rushing at each other once again, and the cuts not stopping for Gojo, everyone wonders if Gojo is about to lose. Jumping on Sukuna though and wrapping his hands around the back of his head, Gojo activates his curse technique reversal, before leaning back and pulling his hands up in preparation to end the fight. Blowing away with what he's just witnessed, Yuta wonders if it's even possible. In his mind, the reason he wasn't able to heal himself for a moment was because Gojo was using reverse curse technique to heal his exhausted curse technique. Unleashing Red, Gojo shoots forth a blast of reverse curse technique, propelling Sukuna back into the shrine that makes up the center of his domain. Noting that, he somehow managed to survive the blast, Gojo activates reverse curse technique to heal, and jokes that, damn, this dude is really turning into a pain in the ass. Going into more depth on the insane feat Gojo just did, Eudora explains that a curse technique, which has been burned out by using domain expansion, is an entirely different matter than physical damage. It's like when a machine overheats, if it isn't broken, you have to let it cool down or it won't work again. Interpreting this, Maki makes it easier to understand by saying that reverse curse technique can repair damage, but it can't help with the cooling effects of it. However, it looks as if this understanding of the ability is completely wrong. Back in Shinjuku, and having made it out of the effective range, Gojo asks if Sukuna is able to expand the size of his area. Not even giving Gojo a second to think, Sukuna instantly expands the size of the Malevolent Shrine's domain expansion to its maximum. In the same moment, Gojo, to the shock of everyone, also expanded his infinite void for a second time. With everyone watching, they wonder if Gojo is really dumb enough to just fall into the same trap as before. Mei notices it first though, and Higuruma, who, by the way, for a new sorcerer, it is so big brain state that Gojo switched conditions on the external and internal conditions of his barrier, which, in simple enough terms for myself and Yuji to understand, means that Gojo this time is able to protect himself against the attacks from outside of his domain. Reinitiating the battle once more, both Gojo and Sukuna trade hands back and forth, but not once do the hits actually end up landing on either side. Jumping back, Gojo is absolutely blown away as he understands that somehow Sukuna was able to use his domain expansion and amplification at the exact same time. On top of that, he is becoming more comfortable inside of his own infinite void, and his curse energy output is only increasing. So, in usual Jujutsu Kaisen combat, you cannot use an innate technique that is etched into your body while using a domain amp, but if you go and imbue your domain with the technique itself, then this is an entirely new situation. Throwing a punch, Sukuna manages to dodge back out of the way. However, as he pushes, trying to strike Dojo, the six-eyed maniac manages to evade the strike and thump the side of Sukuna's body. Managing to spin it out of Gojo's sight, he quickly understands that somehow, and while inside of his own domain, Sukuna turned off his shorthand effect. Knowing that the only ones who are unaffected by Infinite Void are Gojo and anyone he touches, Sukuna's plan is to expand his effective range and increase the power of the binding vow even further than he did in Shibuya with Megami. By using the binding vow, Sukuna is able to further increase the power of his domain outside of Gojo's domain. He does that by removing his short hit guarantee inside of the domain, while simultaneously also keeping himself safe from infinite void by touching Gojo. Due to all of this, and again, just like last time, Gojo's demand collapses, and the man is followed by a plethora of strikes that seemingly knock him away from Sukuna. With everyone back at like the TV station, headquarters place, whatever it honestly is, I don't have a clue what to even call it, react in horror to what's going on in the current battle. Jumo stays that if Gojo dies here, he's going out to fight next, so don't even try and stop him over in Dooku. Gojo activates another technique that he notes he hasn't used much since he mastered his domain. Seeing this, Kyuzukabe spits out his smoke in awe of just having seen Gojo use the falling blossom emotion. For those of you who forgot, because I think it's only been used like maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the series, it's a secret art of the big 3 families, an anti-domain technique. All in all, it's an application of curse energy that automatically repels anything you touch. It would never be able to do something against a complex domain like Infinite Void, but if you're up against something like simple slashes, it's pretty useful. Jumping in, Shoko says that he most likely used it so he can heal his burnout curse technique, or at the least, buy some time. Again though, like what is this, a 3rd time now? Gojo blows him all away as he activates another use of Infinite Void. Unlike all of the previous uses though, this time it is completely massive in comparison, and in Kishimo's eyes, it looks as if Gojo was trying to encapsulate all of Sukuna's domain within his own barrier. Mei thinks it is a bad move trying to expand her domain to that size, as it will drastically lower its effectiveness, and like Haikaruma states, even if the domain isn't destroyed, it's still pointless unless he wins the battle inside of it. Suddenly, Gojo's domain cracks, putting everyone on edge and making them think it is about to fail. Momo though quickly speaks up that no, it's not broken. In fact, the barrier is quickly changing size, and now it's only a fraction of the original size. With Gojo's domain only like the size of a basketball now, Kyuzukabe remarked that this is frankly impossible, causing Mei to joke about how many times they've said these words today. Maki curiously questions its outward appearance, and if the inside is that of a similar size. Kusukabe agrees with her, as that's why when you're usually trapped inside one, you can't get out unless you find the edge of the barrier. Even if you find that edge, a normal domain is resistant to attacks from the outside, so escape is still extremely limited. What's most important when it comes to a barrier technique is a concrete image. Usually, if you try and envision a barrier too small enough to hold yourself and an opponent, it would just collapse. Just like the prison realm though, and probably due to his time being confined in a small space there, is now allowing Gojo to take that and implement it into his domain during the battle. Still, Kyuzukabe can grasp the process around how he's able to change the conditions of his domain each time he uses it. Barriers, particularly domain barriers, typically have a set of internal and external parameters. By discovering their own blend of these parameters, every sorcerer is able to establish their own domain. Confused and piping their heads up, as obviously this wasn't how Higuruma and Hikari figured out their domains. Like they opened their domains by default as a part of their curse technique. In any case, they aren't usually things that can be changed easily. Kusukabe ponders if he changed the size of his domain because it was too difficult to maintain the larger surface mass, so he had to compress it to make things easier, or maybe it was because he wanted to see if he could cover all of the malevolent shrine with an even larger barrier. With Gojo's domain beginning to shake back and forth at such a tremendous speed, the earth itself begins to rumble. Mei points out that even stealth Gojo's domain has managed to hold, and Yuta states that Sukuna has also decreased his domain, so he could increase the output of his curse technique. So, pretty much now, if this version of Gojo's barrier does end up breaking, they'll enter a stalemate. However, Gojo will actually end up being on the back foot as he will run out of options technique-wise. Flashing back over to Shinjuku, sadly, once more, Gojo's domain is getting shattered, and Sukuna emerges victorious for a 3rd time in a domain struggle. Having watched his sensei reappear, Yuji screams out for him. However, in that moment, all of the other sorcerers are flabbergasted as they witness Sukuna's malevolent shrine start to crumble and fall to pieces. On top of that, it's shown that at some point throughout the domain struggle, Gojo was able to land a clean blow to the chest of Sukuna, causing the King of Curses to finally take some proper damage. Seeing this over their monitors, all of the sorcerers scream in joy, believing that Gojo still has a chance to win in this battle. Uniquely enough, it was actually simultaneous. At the exact same time Sukuna destroyed Gojo's domain from the outside, Gojo had actually destroyed Sukuna's domain to the point that he wasn't able to maintain it any longer. Yelling at Miwa, Kyuzukabe asked if she was able to keep track of what was going on in this fight, or if anyone kept track of the time that Gojo's barrier was active. Speaking up, Mei reveals that it was active for 3 minutes and 9 seconds, But if it was more specifically after the moment that it was minimized, then that was exactly 3 minutes. Higuruma believes that now the domains have collapsed, neither of them will be able to use the curse techniques anymore. If that is the case, Maki thinks Gojo can make the first move, since he can restore his burnout curse technique just like he did before. But sadly, Sukuna can also do the same with the reverse curse technique, and speaking of himself, now that he knows how it works, Yuda theorizes that he could probably do it too. Though, like he mentioned earlier, it can't be used to heal a burnout curse technique, but it actually can. He's just tripping right now. The reasoning that Gojo actually showing this to Sukuna is a terrible problem for everyone, is because, back in the past, Sukuna was able to split his spirit 20 times into 20 different objects called Sukuna's curse fingers. After seeing this ability just once in the past, Sukuna learned how to turn himself into a cursed object, and now that he's seen this new ability, it's most likely he'll also be able to restore his burnout curse technique. In Shinjuku, Sukuna boosts his way up onto a bridge, giving a moment of peace before noticing that random parts of the road start to get smashed up from below. Quickly jumping off the bridge and onto some railing nearby, Sukuna notices Gojo break his way up through the bridge behind him. Then, turning back around, realizes that his escape route was blocked by a ball of rocks that Gojo had perfectly floated there using as infinity. With absolutely nowhere to go, Sukuna throws up his hands to block and takes a kick that sends him sliding back along the sidewall. Taking a moment to think about the fight, Gojo wonders why Sukuna has been stubbornly avoiding using any other curse technique than his own. Even when the strength of the barrier was lowered and Gojo had flipped the conditions on it, he didn't try to destroy it from the inside. Instead, he took the riskier option. While they canceled out each other's shorthand effects from within the domain, Sukuna had no other choice but to use his domain amplification in order to beat his limitless curse technique, which was actually a massive advantage for our man. Still, as he saw earlier, within a domain, Sukuna is unable to use buildings to attack. In fact, until after Gojo's domain was destroyed, he technically had the upper hand for over 3 minutes. Yet, in spite of that, he can't seem to understand why Sukuna didn't ever attempt to make use of something from the Ten Shadows technique or Maharaga while in a domain. He has the memory of Megami and the conversation that happened between them, so he knows for a fact that someone of the exact same power died to a person like Megami. Gojo just ponders if he's scared he'll beat Maharaga in one shot. However, in that exact same moment, the wheel turns and blood begins to drip from his own nose. Fucking nosebleed, though. God, she was baiting our damn ass with that one. And in an instant, both him and Sukuna threw up their hands to perform another domain clash. Yuji points out that again, they activated it at the exact same time, and Angel, who is right next to him, brings up that Sukuna can now restore his burnout curse technique, or maybe just decided to hide the fact that he could until now. Kusakabe knows that within the next 3 minutes that it should take Sukuna to destroy Gojo's domain from the outside. Gojo will need to damage Sukuna to the point he can't maintain his domain from the inside. Shuko, joking that they probably shouldn't talk as if Gojo is on the back foot yet, brings up that if Sukuna is hit at all by Unlimited Void, then man is completely done for. Due to this, it's certain that if Gojo is able to destroy the malevolent shrine within the next 3 minutes, then he will win this battle. Inside of Shinjuku, and having flayed up his cursed energy fists, Gojo pounds Sukuna with a barrage of punches that really only bruise the king of Curse's arms. Jumping up, Sukuna tries to quickly get over his shrine. However, he is knocked into the floor, then, while incapacitated, is grabbed by Gojo's infinity and pulled towards himself. Having been flung towards Gojo, Sukuna just manages to block a devastating stomach punch. Randomly, though, and I'm assuming Manju's like Yuji's divergent punch to delay the like, hits of his cursed energy, Sukuna's malevolent shrine is completely destroyed, while in the exact same moment, Gojo's domain also ends. Falling to the ground and looking up, it's evident that this time, Sukuna took a serious blow, as half of his face appears to be missing, with everyone believing that, when it comes down to domain struggles, Gojo is stronger. They all hope, deep within themselves, that he can win. Back in the battle and throwing a fat right hook, Gojo sends Sukuna straight back into the side of a bridge pillar, breaking it in the process. I don't even know what we're at now, this is utterly insane. And in that moment, Gojo and Sukuna launch another set of domain struggles. Yet, unlike all of the previous battles, something is actually different here for the first time, and Yuta can't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, Gojo was able to expand his domain earlier. Inside of the domain struggle, it is revealed that Sukuna was indeed busy healing his body, and because of that, he was late restoring his curse technique. It was less than 0.01 seconds, but Unlimited Void landed on him. As an infinite set of infinite information rushes into the cerebral cortex of history's strongest sorcerer and the king of curses, Owlman, today's current demon rushes forth and pierces the chest of darkness incarnate. Only 2 minutes and 40 seconds after they expanded their domains, Gojo was able to collapse Malevolent Shrine within his innate compound. With nothing, not even the friction of the